So I know our next guest as the previous governor of the state, but before that, he had a number of years. Well, actually, I knew him as the lieutenant governor, too. So former Governor Gary Herbert spent a number of years as an elected official at the state and local level, and then, of course, as our governor. And then after he left the governor's office, he partnered with Utah Valley University to create Utah's newest public policy institute, which is the Gary R. Herbert Institute for Public Policy. Good name, right? And I was wanting to have him on the show to talk about policy, and then a different event happened at Utah Valley University.
Yeah, quite a bit has happened since then, which actually makes it even more topical to have him here and more appropriate. I've known the governor since before he was the governor as well, and just a very impressive man. It never surprised any of us that he elevated himself to become our governor and served in that position very well.
So, Governor, welcome to our show.
Well, thank you, Holly and Greg. It's nice to be with you this morning.
I wonder if we can just jump right in and have a conversation about how we can bridge political divides when we don't agree with each other.
Well, that's a great question. We have challenges in life, whether it's husbands and wives, parents and children, neighbor to neighbor, politicians and constituents. We have a hard time sometimes getting along and having civil dialogue and respect for differences of opinion. And I say the first thing, Holly, is you've got to want to. The partisan divide is so vitriolic out there that you wonder, does anybody want to get along? We play King of the Hill so much that we have what I call an us versus them mentality, and them is always the enemy, and they need to be destroyed. And the level of discourse is really disappointing and needs to be improved.
Governor, what do you think is going on in our country right now? I mean, I'm 43, or excuse me, I've been a lawyer for 43 years and I'm 68 years old, but I just don't recall things being this divisive. And I'm just wondering if you have a take on what's happening right now in our country.
Well, I think I have some theories, and I'm 78, so I'm a lot older than you, Greg. But, you look back at just in our own lifetimes, forget going back to the founding fathers. There's always been some contention in politics. But think of Orrin Hatch. He worked with Ted Kennedy. They were great friends. They didn't agree on everything, but they worked together to try to find solutions and solve a problem. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is a good example of, by all accounts, a liberal Democrat in her politics, but was confirmed to the Supreme Court 96-0 opposition. Think of what we've done and politicizing the Supreme Court and other courts for that matter, and now it's along partisan lines. It's like nothing good could come from a Democrat or from a Republican, and then we act surprised when we find judges that, he was appointed by George W. Bush, and he's siding with the liberal majority, or vice versa with Barack Obama appointment. He's siding with the conservative. The courts shouldn't be conservative or liberal. They should be just the courts. Apply the facts of the law and render a decision. But we politicize it so much. I think it is this attempt to win at all costs. It's just we have reinforced our biases with cable television. Republicans listen to Fox, Democrats MSNBC, and that reinforces whatever your bias is, that's going to be reinforced. And so we just create this divide, and we think each other as not loyal opposition, not colleagues, but the enemy.
Yeah, so Governor, and we are speaking with former Governor Gary Herbert, but if we want to bridge the divide, and if we want to move past seeing people who disagree with us as an enemy, what are one or two practical steps that you have seen work in your lifetime of working to bridge divides?
Well, thank you. Let me just give you some examples of my life. I don't mean to just focus on me, but it worked. One, I reached out to the Democrats when I was governor. We met with them once a week, always with their leadership, sometimes more than that. But what's on your mind? What are our goals? We have a lot in common. We have similar outcomes that are desired. We sometimes only differ on how we get there. Size of government, the role of government, redistribution of income. We want to have healthy economy. We want to have good schools, good roads, environmental concerns, public safety. So those are the outcomes. We just argue over how we get there. So we would sit down and talk about those things. I would say, and I think this was a good model for me, I am a right-of-center Republican, a right-of-center conservative. That's why I affiliate with the Republican Party. But I'm moderate in tone. I don't call people names. I don't think that does any good. Sure, I don't convince anybody. And I'm inclusive in process. I'll sit down with anybody and talk about the issue, and let's see if we can't reason together. And, Horace, we may even find a way to compromise and find common ground. Compromise has become kind of a dirty word. If you ever get any of these fundraising letters from people in Congress, my gosh, send me $5 by midnight tonight or we're all going to die. And so I would suggest all of us, when we have a difference of opinion, we think, well, that's wrong. But we ought to think in terms of, well, listen closely, you may be right. That's a phrase we ought to use more often. Greg, when you and I are discussing, and I should say, you may be right. Let me give that some thought and consideration, and let's get back and talk some more about it. Having some kind of a dialogue and mutual respect and deal with civility is something that's hard sometimes to do. But if we want to have the ability to get along, we need to make an effort to get along. Right now, I think John Curtis is one of the people I think is doing well in trying to do that. He's probably the minority in Congress and the Senate today.
What do you think it is about Utah, though, Governor? And I'm thinking of just the governors in the last 20-so years, even though they've been Republican. It does seem like Utah, and I know that we had a horrible event that happened here last week, but it kind of gave us maybe a black eye, maybe not. But I listened to Governor Cox. I've listened to you over the years, other governors. What do you think we're doing in Utah where we're not following that national trend? Why do we get along here better than it seems like most of the other states are doing?
Well, I think it's because of the culture. Sometimes we don't like to talk about the culture. Does that mean we're mostly LDS? We're a much more religious state than most other states. And I think that brings kind of a camaraderie and an appreciation and respect for somebody else. I think most religions believe that God is our Father, which means we're the children of God. We're brothers and sisters. We ought to treat each other with better respect. I think that helps us to get along. And, for the LDS, one of the great talks that's been given here in the last year was by Russell Nelson, the president of the LDS Church, gave a talk on being a peacemaker. Blessed are the peacemakers. And he talked about that. And I listened to the talk, and boy, I was thinking, well, I know a lot of people could use this talk. When he said, a lot of you out there are thinking I'd like to share this with somebody else. And yet we all ought to say, wait a minute, maybe he's talking to me. Maybe I'm the one that should be looking a little introspectively and say, maybe I'm doing things not quite as good as I could. Maybe I should be a little bit more cordial, respectful, and civil in my own dialogue.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I'll just mention one thing quickly. I got a call from Politico here not too long ago. We have this boundary redistricting problem here in Utah we're working through. But I had somebody call me from Politico and say, we just had a person that came out and said the judge, Judge Gibson, who made the decision, is a left-leaning communist pinko liberal. I thought, and they said, and Governor Herbert, you appointed her. What is your comment to that? And of course, it makes me cringe to think that somebody would say that, use that language. But I just said I've been around long enough. I know a lot of exaggeration, hyperbole comes out of Washington, D.C., and this is just an example of that. We got to get away from that kind of rhetoric. It doesn't do anybody any good, and it certainly doesn't help us solve any problem.
Thank you so much, Governor, and thank you for joining us. We hope to have you on again. That was former Governor Gary Herbert who joined our show, and I thought he had some really great insights about bridging political divides, right? And saying just this one phrase, you may be right.
Yeah, and he just has such a calming presence about it. It was just nice to hear from him. It was a perfect time of where we are in our country to hear that voice and that reasoning. Utah cracked down on road rage last year. We have some preliminary data. Utah's new road rage law working? Let's find out after the break.